Have you ever gotten home after a completely normal conversation, and then your brain decides to replay it like it's the season finale of a drama series? You're brushing your teeth, and suddenly it's back. That moment when you paused too long before answering. That joke that didn't land. That "you too" you said when the waiter told you to enjoy your meal. And now your mind zooms in, enhances the footage, adds dramatic music, and starts asking, "Why did you say that? What were they thinking? Did you sound weird?" Most people assume this means you're insecure, or socially awkward, or just an overthinker. But the psychological reality is far more interesting than that, because when you replay conversations in your head, your brain isn't trying to torture you. It's trying to protect you. Let me show you what's really happening. Imagine your brain as a social prediction machine. For thousands of years, survival depended on belonging. Being accepted by the tribe meant safety. Being rejected meant danger. So your brain evolved to scan social interactions for tiny signals, tone shifts, facial expressions, pauses. It records them, it analyzes them, and afterward, it replays them to see if you missed anything important. When you replay that conversation, you're not being dramatic. You're running a social simulation. Psychologists call part of this process post-event processing. It's common in people with social anxiety, yes, but it also shows up in thoughtful, conscientious, emotionally intelligent people. After a social interaction, especially one that felt important or uncertain, your brain reopens the file and says, "Let's review. Could we have done better?" Think about it like game footage after a sports match. Athletes replay moments not because they hate themselves, but because they want to improve. The problem is your brain doesn't always know when to stop watching the replay. And here's where it gets fascinating. The same brain network that lights up when you replay conversations is part of something called the default mode network. This network activates when you're not focused on the outside world, when you're daydreaming, reflecting, imagining the future. It's the part of you that builds stories, that creates meaning, that connects past and future. So when you replay that awkward meeting or that emotional talk with a friend, your brain isn't just replaying it, it's editing it, rewriting it, imagining alternate endings. What if I had said this instead? What if I had stayed quiet? What if they secretly thought I was annoying? And that's where the emotional intensity kicks in, because your brain doesn't perfectly distinguish between a real social threat and an imagined one. If you imagine someone judging you, your body can react as if it's happening right now. Your heart rate shifts, your stomach tightens, you feel embarrassment again, even if the conversation ended hours ago. It's like emotional time travel. But here's the twist. People who replay conversations often have high social awareness. You care about how you come across. You care about other people's feelings. You're sensitive to nuance. That's not weakness. That's attunement. The downside is that attunement can turn into hyper-attunement. You start reading between lines that may not exist. You interpret neutral expressions as negative. You assume silence means disapproval. It's a cognitive bias called mind reading, and humans are terrible at it. Yet we do it constantly. Have you noticed how, in your mental replay, you always assume the other person noticed your mistake? You imagine them thinking about it long after the conversation ended, but realistically, they probably moved on in 30 seconds. They're replaying their own conversation, their own awkward moment, their own, "Why did I say that?" It's almost funny when you think about it. A room full of humans, each worried about how they appear to the others, while nobody is actually focusing that much on anyone else. But let's go deeper. Replaying conversations is also about control. When something feels uncertain, your brain tries to reduce that uncertainty by analyzing it. If you can find the mistake, maybe you can prevent it next time. If you can understand their reaction, maybe you can avoid rejection. It's your mind's way of saying, "I don't want to be blindsided." The problem is that social interactions are inherently unpredictable. You can say everything right and still be misunderstood. You can say something imperfect and still be deeply liked. Human connection isn't a math equation, and yet your brain keeps searching for the formula. There's also something beautifully human about this replay habit. It means you care about connection. It means your relationships matter to you. People who don't replay conversations at all sometimes operate on autopilot socially. They don't reflect, they don't adapt, they don't grow. You, on the other hand, are reviewing the footage. But here's the key difference between healthy reflection and painful rumination. Intention. Reflection sounds like, "Next time I'll pause and listen more." Rumination sounds like, "Why am I like this? I always mess things up." One is growth-oriented, the other is identity attacking. and your brain can slip from one into the other very quickly. Have you noticed how the replay often gets harsher over time? At first, it's just analysis. Then it becomes self-criticism. Then it becomes a global conclusion about who you are. That's because your brain is wired with a negativity bias. It zooms in on potential threats more than neutral or positive signals. Evolutionarily, missing a threat was more dangerous than missing a compliment. So your brain highlights the awkward pause, not the 10 minutes of smooth conversation. But here's something powerful. Memory is reconstructive. Every time you replay an event, you slightly rewrite it. You add emotion, you emphasize certain details. Over time, the replay can become more dramatic than reality ever was. It's like adding filters to a photo until it barely resembles the original. And yet, this same mental replayability is what allows humans to develop empathy. When you replay a conversation, you're often trying to understand how the other person felt. You imagine their perspective, you simulate their reaction. That's theory of mind at work. The capacity to step outside yourself and into someone else's inner world. In moderation, that's a superpower. It allows you to repair misunderstandings, to apologize sincerely, to grow socially, to deepen emotional intelligence. The goal isn't to stop replaying conversations entirely, it's to shift how you do it. Instead of asking, how did I mess up? What if you asked, what can I learn? Instead of assuming judgment, what if you assume neutrality? Instead of zooming in on one sentence, what if you zoomed out to the entire interaction? Imagine watching the replay as a compassionate coach instead of a ruthless critic. There's also a philosophical layer here. Humans are storytelling creatures. We build our identity through remembered interactions. Who you think you are is partly shaped by how you interpret past conversations. So when you replay them, you're not just analyzing social performance, you're shaping your self-concept. If every replay ends with, I'm awkward, you start believing that story. But if some replays end with, I handled that well, or I was brave to speak up, a different story forms. And maybe that's the quiet opportunity hidden inside this habit. People who replay conversations often have rich inner lives. You think deeply, you imagine possibilities, you reflect. The same mental machinery that fuels overthinking also fuels creativity, empathy, and self-awareness. It's not about shutting it off, it's about guiding it. The next time your brain hits replay at midnight, notice it without panic, almost like you're watching a documentary about yourself. There it is, the social analysis software running again. See if you can gently redirect it, not by force, but by curiosity. What if that pause in the conversation wasn't awkward? What if it was thoughtful? What if that joke that didn't land simply didn't match that moment? And that's okay. What if being human includes tiny imperfections that make you relatable? Because here's the irony. The very moments you replay and cringe at are often invisible to others. And sometimes, those imperfect moments are what make you memorable in a good way. Connection doesn't require flawless performance. It requires authenticity. And authenticity is rarely perfectly polished. So if you're someone who replays conversations in your head, maybe you're not broken. Maybe you're reflective. Maybe you're sensitive in a world that moves fast. Maybe you just need to shift from self-judgment to self-compassion. Your brain is trying to keep you safe. Thank it. Then gently remind it that you survived the interaction. You're still here. The tribe didn't exile you. And maybe tonight, when the replay starts, you can smile at it instead of fighting it. You can say, I see what you're doing, and then choose which version of the story you want to keep. If this feels familiar, I'd love to know. Do you replay conversations more after serious talks, arguments, or even small everyday chats? Drop it in the comments. And if exploring the hidden patterns of your mind fascinates you, stick around. There's a lot more going on in that quiet inner world than you've been told. And sometimes the storm in your mind isn't chaos. It's reflection waiting to become clarity.